like to introduce myself. I've been involved in surrogacy for the past, well, personally, for the past 19 years. My surrogacy practice really took off after surrogacy was finally legislated in South Africa, which came into effect on the 1st of April 2010. And since the advent of gay marriages and the legalization thereof, surrogacy has been quite in demand. And it's actually amazing to see how many of our gay male couples have become parents through surrogacy, through my practice, through the various fertility clinics across the country. So that times they are a-changing. I'm just going to take you through our legal process. One of the most incredible things about our surrogacy laws is that they are so incredibly well developed. When one looks internationally at the way the legislative frameworks work overseas, they are definitely lagging behind us. Aside from the US, the rest of the world is years and years behind us. So we have incredible surrogacy systems in place in South Africa. The most salient feature of our surrogacy process is the fact that we have what we call a preconception surrogate motherhood agreement. The importance of this for all of us is that before your baby is even conceived through surrogacy, an application is made to the High Court of South Africa, during which time your surrogate motherhood agreement must be confirmed by a judge. You cannot do surrogacy in South Africa through the back door illegally. There is only one way for it to be done, and that is through a legitimate surrogate motherhood agreement coupled with an application to the High Court. Now, why this is so important for parents going through surrogacy is that the High Court order has a very strong and definite purpose in that it declares you as the parents to be the parents of the child upfront to the exclusion of your surrogate mother. The surrogate mother's name will not appear anywhere on the birth certificate once your baby is born through surrogacy. The second important thing that the High Court order does is it authorizes your fertility doctor to go ahead and transfer any of your embryos or you will then make new embryos and transfer your genetic material and embryos into the uterus of your surrogate mother. So that's the two-pronged purpose of why we obtain a High Court order. The rest of the world is lagging behind us. If we look at the UK system, for example, you would not do a preconception surrogate motherhood agreement. You would only approach the court once your babies are born. And then you have you're in a real gray area, a minefield, where your surrogate can then change her mind. Now, obviously, the burning question on all of our minds is always, can your surrogate mother change her mind and elect to keep the baby? The importance of this High Court order is that she can't. There's only one exception to this rule. If you're entering into what we call a traditional surrogate motherhood agreement, that is where we utilize the genetic material of your surrogate mother. In other words, we're using her own eggs together with your partner's sperm in the process. Then she may elect at any stage during the surrogacy to keep the baby and to then claim what we call in law full parental rights and responsibilities to the baby. That does not happen in a situation where the couple are using their own genetic material, or where you as a single dad are using perhaps only an egg donor and your sperm, or where you are using donor egg and one of the partner's sperm in a heterosexual situation. What happens in hospital is that you'll have a representative of the Department of Home Affairs who will issue a birth certificate upon your presentation to the department of your High Court order. And if you are gay parents, you are listed as the dads on the birth certificate. If you're a heterosexual parent, the mom and dad. And if you're a single dad, you'll be registered as the dad. And where the section reads mother, it will be stated not applicable. So we're hoping that the Department of Home Affairs has now got around this. We've had quite a few hiccups along the way dealing with the department and registration of births, but they seem to be getting there, and we are dealing with a fairly smooth process going forward, other than in our very small little towns where they never see surrogacies and they've had their first time ever surrogacy birth. The other important aspect of our High Court order is that we don't go through any adoption procedures. Everything is done upfront in the High Court order. All the assessments take take place initially before we transferring any of your genetic material into the uterus of the surrogate. Now, which persons are eligible to apply for surrogacy? You'll find that we have probably the most liberal constitution in the world. Same-sex male commissioning parents very commonly are looking towards surrogate mothers. Heterosexual commissioning parents, where the mom has a serious and irreversible medical condition. For example, I have a lot of clients who are suffering from breast cancer. They've had chemotherapy. They're on long-term estrogen suppressive medication, which does not allow them to be pregnant because of potential for fetal abnormalities. We've got kidney transplant patients, liver transplant patients. So your condition must be serious. We don't do surrogacy in South Africa like they do in the States in Hollywood, where the women don't want to upset their figures and they're looking to the surrogate. That is not permissible, and rightly so. The other class of persons who can't give birth to children due to their gender, such as transgender persons. I'm very proud to say that I did the first ever case in Africa on a transgender person who underwent surrogacy. Her surrogate mom gave birth to twins approximately 2 years ago. And that was a real challenging case, very interesting case, but it was an amazing case to present before the court because it was all embraced by the Constitution and the liberal outlook that we have towards transgenderism, same-sex male and female commissioning parents. Now, the issue of domicile is a very, very important criteria. No persons may use our surrogacy systems unless they are domiciled in South Africa. I'm going to explain domicile to you, but just for your purposes, it's generally for people that are South African citizens living in South Africa. There's so much immigration happening in South Africa. We've got a lot of expats, for example, living abroad. If you have fully immigrated to another country, you may not make use of our surrogacy systems. The fact that you have a South African passport or that you're still a South African citizen, but in your mind you've made a full immigration to Australia, you do not qualify for surrogacy in South Africa. None of the clinics are allowed to treat foreign nationals for surrogacy in South Africa. The importance of this is because we don't want a situation where you have foreigners making use of our surrogacy systems, and I actually say making use, but it's actually abusing our surrogacy systems, and then creating babies for the wrong purposes, such as child trafficking, pedophile rings, pornographic children rings. Those are the sort of preventative actions that our laws are trying to safeguard against. So dealing with the legalities of South Africa, it doesn't really make sense unless I quickly run you through the whole surrogacy process, and then you can kind of make sense of why and how all these laws are in place. The most important thing to start off with is firstly, if you're a heterosexual couple, you've got to make sure that you have your doctor's directive that you need to look towards surrogacy. If you're a same-sex male couple, it's straightforward. The first thing that you need to do is you need to find a surrogate mother. Surrogate moms are incredibly difficult to find. On a daily basis, we probably have 5 to 6 inquiries from surrogate moms, but there's a high fallout rate once we go through the criteria, because most surrogates in South Africa apply for financial compensation. Financial compensation is absolutely prohibited. If we find a surrogate whose primary motivation is financial, firstly, she doesn't legally qualify. Secondly, it lends you open as parents towards financial abuse and extortion along the line, and that's not what we want. This is not a risk-taking process. I always have the philosophy in my practice of doing fewer surrogacies better. So who can apply as a surrogate? It can be a friend, it can be a family member. We have sisters assisting one another, which is normally your best form of surrogacy. It can be your best friend, or it can be a total stranger. Now, you always ask the question, why would a total stranger want to help a couple to have a family? I've been through hundreds and hundreds of surrogacies with many different surrogate moms, and their motivation is generally the same. They love being pregnant. It's something that they do easily. They want to be pregnant again. They want to feel the baby grow inside them, but they don't want any more children of their own. They cannot, and I keep reiterating, be doing this for financial reasons. Under no circumstances should you ever enter into a private agreement with your surrogate mom to pay her on the side. This is a criminal offense, and you are going to lend yourself open to a lot of abuse along the way. Can the surrogate mom elect to keep the baby? No, she can't. Does she ever bond with the baby in utero? In my experience over the last 19 years, no, she doesn't. The bonding, in my experience, generally happens with the parents. It's a beautiful journey if it's done legally and correctly. And the bonding will take place with the parents. What is your relationship with your surrogate mom along the way? I always say to my clients, it's a personal journey, but it's also a professional one. There are boundaries in place. I don't encourage my parents to invite the surrogate home for dinner, and it'll be part of your daily life. You carry on with your married life, and the surrogate mother and her family carries on with her life. It is always a good idea to have a social worker do a home visit so that we can ensure that your surrogate mom is living in decent living circumstances. We do not use surrogate moms that are unemployed. We do not use surrogates that are in impoverished living circumstances. They must have a decent standard of living. They must be financially well-resourced. They must be emotionally well-resourced. So we have all these criteria, and coupled with the fact that it's really difficult to find surrogates. So how do you find a surrogate? You could, I think the best advice that I always give to everybody is to speak to as many people as possible and put the word out amongst friends and family that you are looking for a surrogate mom to carry your child. There's no shame in infertility anymore. People are talking about it. You only have to look around you to see it's the first ever fertility show in Africa. Things are changing. Same-sex parents have got through the obstacles of coming out the closet and breaking the news to their parents, and they're becoming married and they're becoming dads. A lot of family members come forward and do our surrogacies. As I said, those are the best surrogacies that we generally have. And then when we select these ladies who are strangers to our parents, we've got to be very particular about the sort of women that we use. These girls undergo intensive medical screenings, and the most important part of this whole process is the psychological screening. We do this initially after the doctors have seen the surrogate and qualify her medically. She will then be referred on to a psychologist who will do an intensive psychological evaluation on her, and this can take place over a 2-week period on two to three separate meetings with the psychologist, just to ensure that all the checks and balances are in place. Once her psychological evaluations have been attended to, there are criminal checks which are done. We actually do the criminal checks at the outset, just actually before your surrogate is even introduced to you, so that we can be sure that she doesn't have any serious criminal convictions. Once your psychological evaluation has been completed on your surrogate mom, your criminal checks are done, her medical evaluations and extensive blood tests. You will rely on your own fertility clinic to guide you in that regard. Then the legal process starts. The legal process involves drafting a surrogate motherhood agreement. My agreements have evolved over a period of 19 years, and I've seen a lot through the years. So we kind of ensure that, during every surrogacy process, I'm learning something new. And if something goes mildly wrong during one of our processes, the next time we include that in the agreement to try and take preventative action. There is a lot of protection in these agreements because your surrogate motherhood agreement is backed up by a high court order. A high court judge authorizes the process to take place and to be proceeded with. So that in a nutshell is surrogacy. I'm sure there's going to be some questions, so I would prefer to let people ask, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.